Hello everybody, it's Albert. In this video, I'm going to give a presentation of a verse in the New Testament, the first letter of John, chapter 3, verse 1, as it applies to the issue of King James Onlyism. And the reason I want to concentrate on this is that once we go through exactly what appears in the verses, and once I present exactly what the difference is between them and why the difference occurs, it will be painfully obvious what happened. And it is so obvious. And this is one of those situations where they'll come up with all sorts of weird ideas as why this came in or why it didn't, etc. But it's very simple. The difference between them, and it has nothing to do with anything the King James translators did. It has to do with the Greek text they received, what was called the Textus Receptus, and in fact it goes back to even to the majority text. What happens is that every single copy of 1 John up to the 8th century has something in it. Once you get to the 8th century, suddenly manuscripts appear without it, without this little phrase. And then and eventually because this particular missing phrase becomes missing in Byzantium, in Constantinople, it gets spread in most of the later texts. And hence, the phrase actually gets lost in the majority of copies of 1 John. Everything prior to that, no matter where it came from, included an extra clause. It's missing from earlier version, from the King James Version. It's missing from earlier Greek texts, let's say from Stephanus and Beza and Erasmus. It's missing in what you might call the majority of the Greek text that came from Constantinople in that area. But if you go earlier than that, it's in every single copy of 1 John we have prior to the 8th century. The earliest you see it missing is in a few uncials in the 8th and 9th century, KL 049, and then eventually it ends up as this phrase is missing in the majority text. Now the importance is, basically, if what I present here is correct, King James Onlyism is shot out of the water. It cannot be the perfectly preserved New Testament text because, well, it's missing something that was obviously part of the New Testament. So let's get to the gory details of this one, and it'll be interesting to see how King James Onlyists will respond to this video. Okay, so let's go back, and what we're going to do is we're going to actually take a look at 1 John 3:1, and I will explain exactly what the difference is and how it occurred and why it occurred. And again, it's something very simple. Somebody made a mistake and it just got passed on. And it's obvious why it occurred once you look at the Greek text, but we'll get to that a little later. Here are the verses as they appear in the King James Version, and I just picked the English Standard Version, the ESV, because it tends to have phrasing similar to the King James Version. In the King James Version it says, "Behold, what manner of love the Father hath bestowed upon us, that we should be called the sons of God. Therefore the world knoweth us not, because it knew him not." The ESV is basically the same thing. The words are slightly different, they're modern words, and then there's a few things where they use just more gender-neutral things. But the main thing that's different is it has an extra phrase, "and so we are." After it says and that we should be called children of God, and so we are. That's in modern versions. It's not in the King James Version. It's not in earlier versions. Not that these people were doing anything wrong. They were translating the Greek text they received. That's it. That's what they had. That's what they translated. So no one's saying they translated something incorrectly. It has nothing. It goes beyond that. It goes before them. Okay. Now, but the fact is that if in fact what I am going to show is correct, and I believe it is, I think it's pretty obvious once you see it, it means that they got something wrong. Even though it certainly wasn't intentional, and it's nothing they could have controlled. It's simply something got lost that was in the majority of manuscripts, but still was preserved in other manuscripts. So let's get to the details by first taking a look at this in Greek. On the top, I've used the Scrivener Greek text, and it's pretty much the same with Stephanus and Beza, etc. And below we have the Nestle-Aland text of the same verse, and what's missing is, again, it's in yellow. It says chiasmin, and we are, or and so we are, whichever way you want. It could be put in either way. Now, what I want you to look at, that it's on the second line. You see where it's yellow. The word before it is klethomen, that we shall be called. The last two words on the first line, teknotheo, means children of God. Klethomen, that we may be called. So it's that we may be called children of God. Chiasmin, and so we are. Now, I can guarantee you, first of all, that if this were the other way around, and if it were missing from the modern versions and was in the King James Bible, you'd have King James Onlyists running around screaming that, modern translators are denying that we're adopted as sons of God because of the corrupt Alexandrian manuscripts. I'm not going to do that because it's pretty obvious what happened once you see it, and it has nothing to do with anybody's paranoia or conspiracy theories. It's simply a mistake, an honest mistake. And be honest, it doesn't really matter a whole lot in terms of theology. Certainly the idea of adoption appears in other verses, so it's not really an issue here. But King James Onlyists will tend to isolate one phrase in one verse and say it's being denied just because it doesn't appear there, even if in the original text it didn't appear there, it appeared somewhere else. But that's just kind of the way conspiracy theories go. And now what I want to do next, as we shall see, is I'm going to just highlight the in red here. You'll see that in the top it says klethomen dia. Dia is the beginning of the next sentence, and then in the Nestle-Aland klethomen chiasmin dia. And the reason I'm gonna focus in on these words, okay? Because I want to take a closer look. And here we see it at the top, klethomen dia, klethomen chiasmin dia. Now, there's a thing that happens when in Greek, particularly Greek unsealed texts, which they use there's a technical phrase, homoiteliuton, which basically means same endings. And here's what happens. You're copying something down. You finish a word, okay? You you see the word on the page, you write it down. Because remember, these are all handwritten manuscripts. You go back to the page, and close by, there's another word with the same ending. The word ends with the same letters. And you accidentally go to that word and then begin copying again, because you see the last few letters and think that's where I left off, and you keep going. This is especially the case because, unlike what you see here, the words would actually be written out in the unsealed text in all capital letters with no spaces. So it would actually look something like this. And in fact, it would be worse than that because there'd be letters before it from previous words, letters after it from subsequent words. I've only cut it down so we could take a look at these particular pieces here, okay? So, as I said, the top we have klethomen dia, the bottom we have klethomen chiasmin dia, and you can see it already looks confusing just by looking at it right now. Now, in some of the unsealed text, depending on when the unsealed text was written, some of these letters may appear differently. The sigma may look more like a C. That's the thing that kind of looks like a weird-looking E, and they use it for a summation sign in mathematics. And there's a few other things that may be different. The lambda might look more like the lowercase lambda, only bigger. So, like I said, there's differences, but pretty much this is it still has the same effect. Okay. And it just depends on when the unsealed text was written. But I just want you to take a look at this, and you can see already, and imagine more letters at the beginning and end, it would be very easy to lose your place in this jumble of Greek letters. And this is, I think, maybe where they get the phrase, it's all Greek to me. If you can imagine looking at this, it'd be pretty confusing. And I would have no clue. I have no idea how people read these things or read those things many thousand, like over 1,000 years. I have no idea how anybody could read this, but be what it may, that's what it pretty much would look like. Now, what I can imagine, and what we're going to do next, is I'm highlighting. Now, I want you to notice this is the letters mu, epsilon, nu, appears twice in the older manuscripts. It appears twice. Now imagine you're a scribe copying this. You get to the word klethomen, which ends in that first mu, epsilon, nu. So you copy that down, and basically what you have there is klethomen. You've got that, you read that, you looked over, you started writing it down, you wrote down klethomen, you went back and accidentally went to the mu, epsilon, nu, the thing that was like men. You went to the second one at the end of chiasmen. So basically you missed the chiasmen. And so what would happen is you began copying at the delta iota alpha, which would be the next word, and you get exactly what appears in the later text. This is an obvious case of homoteleuton. This happens a lot in Greek manuscripts. In most cases, in 99% of the cases, it's obvious because what you have left makes absolutely no sense. It's like nonsense words. It just makes no, and looking at the other text, you say, oh, obviously, it's pretty obvious what happened. In this case, though, like if you had a case where it was nonsense, someone would go, wait a minute, let's go look at another manuscript. Here, though, the end result of this mistake makes perfectly good sense. To say that we may be called children of God and then go to the next sentence. That makes perfectly good. It's a full sentence. But you've missed that phrase there, and so we are. Purely accidentally. But it happens, and then that got copied eventually to the majority of manuscripts. So what? Well, in terms of theology, in terms of the doctrine of the church, well, nothing really. It has absolutely no effect, as I said. It wouldn't make me throw out a King James Bible if I enjoyed the King James Bible. It really has no true meaning in terms of the content of what you're getting in 1 John. But the fact is, King James Onlyists claim that the King James Bible is absolutely perfectly translated from it's a perfect match for the originals. Well, no, it isn't. And here's an obvious reason why. So I'm not saying it makes the King James Bible somehow majorly deficient. It doesn't. But it makes it part of a human process of transmitting the text, and not some magical thing that happened in 1611 that nobody could ever change, and no matter what you do, it's going to be wrong, and this is no, it's one translation. These men did the very best they could. They did a great job with the tools they had in 1611. In this case, certainly it's obvious. We know better now. It's nothing they could have possibly known, any more than Newton could have known Einstein's theory of relativity in 1611. It would have been impossible. But we do. And now we know that, hey, a verse got dropped. Not a major thing, but it demonstrates that this transmission process that you ended up with the King James Bible was not infallible. It was human. They did a fine job. The King James Bible is to be praised for what it's done for the church for hundreds of years. but it isn't what King James Onlyists claim it is. Thank you very much for your time.